Another round of applause for him. Good. Thank you very much.
Good morning and thank you, delegates, and welcome to Accra. The General Secretary of Harakati Zamungano, esteemed delegates of Harakati Zamungano from member countries, executives and representatives of allied organizations and member countries, representation from main organizations and student bodies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I will begin my speech by commending the leadership of Harakati Zamungano for continually working assiduously to integrate Africa and promote sustainable development on the continent. Africa today is confronted with both immense challenges and unparalleled opportunities. This requires us as a people to embark on a journey of bold systemic reforms and structural transformation through deep policy changes and integration to promote sustainable development. This conference has therefore been bringing us together as African vanguard to fashion out bold policies, programs and projects to be submitted to African people, African governments, regional organizations to facilitate integration, union, transformation, and sustainable development of our region in an expeditious manner. Post-independence Africa has witnessed a lot of African countries struggle to deal with developmental challenges in their separate and balkanized existence. Presently, most African countries are saddled with mounting national debts, high inflation, high unemployment rates, low manufacturing base, import dependency, insecurity, conflicts, and environmental degradation. The prevailing condition of African people is deeply troubling. Of all today's people, citizens of African countries remain the most dependent, deprived, undereducated, and having low life expectancy. African people continue to experience dwindling real incomes, rising unemployment, increasing illiteracy, declining healthcare, poor housing, population explosion. We have been left behind by the rest of the world because our participation in global economic activity steadily continues to decline. But Sub-Saharan Africa has boundless opportunities and possibilities if we apply systemic and structural reforms and unite at a sub-regional group level or larger continental level to pursue our development agenda. Africa is endowed with abundant resources. African continent accounts for 17% of the world's population, constituting a dynamic labor force and a large market to propel speedy development. From United Nations report, Africa is home to some 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 8% of the world's natural gas, 12% of the world's oil reserves. The continent has 40% of the world's gold and up to 90% of its chromium and platinum. The continent has 40% of the world's gold and up to 90% of platinum, and it holds 65% of the world's arable land and 10% of the planet's internal renewable fresh water source. The region is home to the world's largest arable landmass. Yet, Africans continue to die from hunger, malnutrition, and famine. The continent has at least a fifth of the world's reserves in dozen green minerals that are critical for the growing energy transition sector. Africa's metals are essential to the rapid transition of energy systems away from fossil fuels. Despite all these, Africa's share of global trade remains a paltry 3%. According to the African Union, intra-African trade stands at 15%, compared to approximately 60% intra-regional trade for Europe, 40% intra-regional trade for North America, and 30% intra-regional trade for the ASEAN bloc. Due to the fact that Africa does the bulk of its trade with the outside world, and the exports are heavily concentrated on primary commodities, the continent continues to be vulnerable to external macroeconomic shocks and protectionist trade policies. Past global economic and financial crises, which were not of Africa's making, did adversely impact on the continent's economic performance because of its fragmentation, weak structures, and low levels of industrialization. Africa is home to a wealth of resources, youthful population, diverse cultures that can drive our continent towards expedited sustainable development. However, to harness this potential, we must commit ourselves to bold structural and systemic changes that address the barriers hindering our progress. Now is the time for Africa to institute a reset through structural and systemic transformation of our society. The largest reserves of cobalt, diamonds, platinum, and uranium in the world are in Africa. If much is not done about it, it will remain there to the disadvantage of African people. Structural and systemic transformation involves altering the fundamental ways in which our economies operate and our societies function. It is about shifting from low productive sectors to more productive ones and creating an environment that fosters innovation, investment, and economic diversification. This transformation agenda requires us to rethink our approach to policy making and program execution by implementing reforms that are bold, decisive, inclusive, and forward-thinking. Deep policy reforms are paramount to achieving our vision of sub-regional integration. They encompass transforming various sectors, including reforms in 7 key sectors, namely infrastructure development, healthcare, education, savings, investment, pensions, governance, and trade. We must aim to invest in infrastructure as a people. Infrastructure development is the backbone of economic activity. By prioritizing investment in energy, transportation, digital space, and housing, we create an environment for business to thrive. Infrastructure development is a key driver for progress across the African continent and a critical enabler for productivity and sustainable economic growth. It contributes significantly to human development and poverty reduction. For Africa, the need for adequate infrastructure in secure energy, efficient transport, reliable digital connectivity, and affordable housing cannot be overemphasized. Africa's vast infrastructure deficit is a constraint on its growth, but also an opportunity to leapfrog to new, more efficient technologies. As Africa records population boom and becomes more urbanized, public goods will become easier and cheaper to deliver if infrastructure is developed to make population more connected digitally and geographically. Key challenges will be to supply the burgeoning population with reliable electricity, transport infrastructure, communication systems, affordable housing, and these will promote industries which will also create jobs. In Africa, 62% of the people lack access to electricity, according to World Bank data. And the same lack access to road access. Road access averages 34%, even though road transport remains the dominant means of transportation, according to the African Union. Most African countries suffer from underdeveloped digital infrastructure and a lack of accessible and affordable connectivity, with an estimated 900 million people still not connected to the internet across the African continent, according to European Investment Bank. Sourcing from the International Finance Corporation, the housing deficit in Africa is estimated at over 97 million units. And this is expected to increase as the continent's population grows and urbanization continues. Decent housing, where available, is simply not affordable for the mass majority of African people. While the continent has seen tremendous economic growth over the past years, there exist serious infrastructure shortcomings that have been hampering business growth, service delivery, trade, and investment, as well as progress in sustainable development and the region's competitiveness. Africa can leapfrog with new and sound technologies, drawing on the best innovations from around the world. A well-connected Africa will not only enhance domestic markets, but also position Africa as a global player. Improvement in healthcare delivery. A healthy population is an economic asset, since the assured supply of a strong and healthy labor force is an essential factor in development. The state of healthcare in Africa is not just a matter of individual well-being, but one that is directly linked to economic development, social stability, and society's resilience. Despite progress made in the health sector in the sub-region, most African countries still face significant healthcare challenges. Our health systems remain underfunded and inadequately equipped to handle today's challenges, as was evident during the COVID-19 pandemic. Heavy investment in healthcare infrastructure and in the health sector to provide good health for all must be emphasized. Primary health care, which addresses the main health problems in the community by providing preventive, curative, rehabilitative services, must be integrated. Proper nutrition, adequate supply of clean water, basic sanitation, immunization against the major infectious diseases, education concerning preventing health problems, and controlling locally endemic diseases, as well as applying appropriate treatment for common diseases, must be strongly promoted. Healthcare at different levels and space in our countries must be made available, accessible, affordable, and qualitative for our people. African governments must therefore invest heavily in healthcare delivery and integrate public-private healthcare financing structures into the healthcare system to achieve desired outcomes. Heavy investment to strengthen health research, infrastructure development, and the development of new preventive, diagnostic, therapeutic, and better control of tropical diseases in African countries must be promoted. Increase innovation through education. Our greatest asset lies in our people. Investing in education is essential to equip our youth with the skills required for modern workforce. Emphasizing STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, education will prepare them to compete in a global economy driven by technology, innovation, artificial intelligence. Africa has the largest youth population in the world and therefore needs heavy investment in education to increase creativity, productivity, technological breakthroughs, and development. Africa's youth bulge must be transitioned into a large middle class and a large pool of highly skilled manpower resource required to spur growth and propel development. As African countries undertake socio-political and socio-economic reforms to engender stabilization and growth, emphasis should be placed on education that promotes creativity, efficiency, with specific attention on the job market. Focus should be placed on information and communication technology, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, vocational, and technical disciplines. In addition to the conventional education system, the apprenticeship, vocational, and technical education program must be emphasized. An integrated educational approach is needed to provide a large pool of the requisite scientific and technological expertise, technical and vocational manpower skills needed to grow the African economy. An integrated educational approach is needed to provide a large pool of the requisite scientific, technological expertise, technical and vocational manpower skills needed to spur growth. Education at different levels and space in member countries must be made available, accessible, affordable, and qualitative for our people. African governments must therefore invest heavily in education and integrate public-private education financing structures into education administration to achieve positive outcomes. Expanding savings and investments. Savings for investment is the backdrop of any economy geared towards sustainable growth. In most African countries, domestic savings are primarily low because of low income, low incentives for saving, unfavorable savings policy, and ultimately lack of jobs. Both formal and informal savings in African countries are primarily for short-term purposes. Savings help with capital accumulation in the hands of banks and other financial institutions, who in turn lend the same capital to other businesses and individuals to create assets and spur growth. The low level of formal savings means many banks have limited funds to lend out to support economic activity. Savings is required for investment to take place, and investment is required to achieve economic growth. Increased domestic savings means high investment, which lends to high economic growth rate. African countries' inability to mobilize savings for investment and capital formations lead to the use of foreign capital, which is associated with high borrowing interest and severe conditionalities. African governments must strengthen the continent's national savings mechanism. The expansion of financial technology and the use of mobile apps can help in many ways to promote the culture of small-scale savings in the informal sector and in the rural economy. Higher sustainable savings models are a necessity if Africa is to lead to increased investment to engender job creation, spurring growth, and an increase in government revenues. Secure pensions. Pensions play an important role in the elimination of poverty. Global experience shows that issues surrounding aging populations cannot be addressed so easily when they start hitting hard. There is therefore a need for a sustainable pension system to address a significant part of these challenges in sub-Saharan Africa. As Africa's youth population increases, the youth will mature and also equally age. In most African countries, only a small percentage of the older population have a contributory pension. Pension systems face a lot of challenges in our continent. These challenges include low incomes, low incentives for pension enrollment, unfavorable pensions policy, and lack of jobs. Extending coverage to workers in the large informal sector is a major challenge in all African countries. There is a need for a sustainable approach to extending pensions coverage to a large segment of our informal economy. The structure and challenges to the pension system in African countries must be addressed to facilitate the extension of pension coverage to the large informal sector. In sub-Saharan Africa, where financial systems are underdeveloped, pensions can contribute to economic growth by improving access to finance for productive activities. In addition to social pensions being affordable for African economies, developing funded pension systems can also reduce government expenditure, thereby releasing funds to support other key policy initiatives that are needed to spur growth. Pension funds and other institutional investors can also help to improve the operation of financial markets by making markets more liquid, efficient, and transparent. Agencies to expand coverage of social security and pensions to serve the larger informal sector and the formal sector must be promoted by African governments. Strengthening governance institutions. Robust and resilient governance institutions are critical in guaranteeing sustainable development. Governance has two sides: political and economic. The political aspect deals with the way a nation is governed. The economic aspect deals mainly with low societal resources, how societal resources are managed towards development. In sub-Saharan Africa, where satisfying basic necessities of life is still a challenge, the definition of governance must be inclusive. Good governance must include accountability, legitimacy, transparency, rule of law, an open and enabling environment for addressing socioeconomic problems, and effective participation in public decision-making and management by the citizenry. This requires participatory democracy and effective capacity by governments to respond to the demands of development. Good governance is not only about providing an open and free political atmosphere. It also requires a government with the capacity to provide food, clothing, shelter, energy, employment, and thereby raise the standard of living of its citizens. Weak institutional governance systems can breed disenchantment with government and threaten the collapse of participatory democracy in the sub-region. Failure in strengthening the governance system will see sub-Saharan Africa gradually slide back into political strife, dictatorship, autocratic rule, as we have witnessed in most of our sub-regional countries. Sub-Saharan African countries must effect bold policy reforms to strengthen governance institutions to address the problems of corruption, undemocratic systems, civil strife, environmental degradation, unemployment, and low agricultural productivity. African governments must continue to expand the democratic space, promote transparency, and foster the rule of law. African governments must build accountable, transparent, and resilient institutions that will foster trust and engagement among the citizens and stakeholders. Facilitating trade policies. Sub-regional African countries must remove trade barriers, harmonize regulations, improve trade infrastructure across borders, and facilitate cross-border trade to become competitive in today's global village. By facilitating easier trade, we can stimulate economic growth and bolster job creation throughout the continent. Facilitating cross-border trade in a sub-region implies eliminating or drastically reducing tariffs and non-tariff barriers, which is better achieved through sub-regional integration. Promotion of trade must impact the institutionalization of the burgeoning private sector that will increase production of goods and services, including such human needs as accommodation, healthcare, education, water, energy, food, clothing, pensions for people. The strategy must be to use the regional market as a mechanism to promote a better insertion of the African economy into the world market. Sub-regional integration is not merely a strategy, it is a necessity. Sub-regional blocks must be integrated to promote free movement across borders for people, goods, services, and capital. Sub-regional groups such as the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, the Economic Community of Central African States, ECAS, the East African Economic Community, EAC, the Southern African Development Community, SADC, and other sub-regional state groups must be integrated to collapse fiscal colonial barriers, eliminate trade barriers, and through the execution of constitutional amendments that will effect bold policy reforms to establish an integrated region to expedite Africa's development. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area offers a significant opportunity for us to increase intra-African trade, but it is evidently not enough. African people deserve a deep integration that goes beyond a free trade, such as promoted by the African Continental Free Trade Area. African people yearn for a deep integration that transcends a customs union, a common market, and economic union, to embrace a political union in the sub-region which will see member country states exhibit the characteristics of a dynamic economic union, and in addition, harmonize member states' foreign, defense, and intelligence policies under a common coordination. We aspire to move from a community of states to a community of people. An integrated and united Sub-Saharan Africa will stand stronger against internal conflicts and external threats, fostering a more stable environment for increased trade, economic growth, and human development. An integrated and united Sub-Saharan Africa will be better positioned to deal with external shocks such as the current Trump-led United States tariff on African countries and the global economy, and against future economic crises like the 2008 financial meltdown and any future pandemic like the COVID-19. Such an integration and union will enable us collectively to harness our resources, manage our disputes more effectively, and create a more compelling voice on the international stage. By allowing free movement of people, goods, services, and capital across our borders, we can significantly boost intra-African trade and expeditiously advance Africa's cause. To conclude, as a vanguard of African society, let us champion policy reforms that promote structural transformation, foster sub-regional integration, spur growth, and expedite sustainable development in our various countries and in the sub-region. Together, we can create a future where Africa stands as a beacon of resilience, innovation, and prosperity. As we take this crucial step towards a united and thriving continent, let us remember that our strength lies not in our resources, but in our collaboration, vision, and unwavering commitment to a shared future. Achieving these lofty goals requires robust frameworks, steadfast dedication, and unwavering commitment from African people and our sub-regional governments. It necessitates that we not only envisage a united sub-regional Africa, but compel our governments to take pragmatic steps to enact and enforce policies that bring this vision to fruition. We share a common destiny as Africans. Let us therefore keep up this challenge together as one people, bound by our shared future of unity, prosperity, and dignity. We must leave this conference motivated to spread the message to build an integrated, politically, economically, and socially bound region. An integrated region which posterity will inherit as a land of prosperity, security, and peaceful development. Thank you.